Okay, welcome back to Soul Invictus. So today I wanted to do something going back to the NAG Hammadi. Wanted to read a little bit from there because I'm starting to read a lot more from this book, and there's a lot of interesting information in here that I do want to portray. And so one of the ones that I actually want to talk about today and showcase a little bit here is the Treatise on Resurrection. And so this is kind of fascinating to me. This does make a lot of sense, according to what I've read, even in the Bible, as far as the New Testament is concerned. So it's not too long. I'll go through it. I'm going to try to scroll through some of this with you, although this translation here is from Willis Barstone, and the one that I have is translated by Marvin Mayer. So it's a slightly different translation. So I'll try to scroll down a little bit. If I lose my place on the right side, there is a link down below to read this too, if you want to read this as well. This is a slightly different translation, but still pretty much the same meaning. So yeah, this is the whole thing here that you can read through. I'll scroll as far as I can go, as far as I can tell them in the same spot. But if I stop, you can go ahead and check the link out and read it yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and read from this book here because just it's easier for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully this helps you out. It's a good source of information. And so here we go. The Treatise on Resurrection. The letter to Reginus. I think I'm saying that right. But yeah, the letter to Reginus. Reginus, my son, some people want to become intellectuals. That is their goal when they try to explain unsolved problems, and if they are successful, they have an exalted opinion of themselves. I do not think they are established on the word of truth. Rather, they seek their own rest, which we have received from Christ, our Savior and Lord. We received rest when we came to know the truth and rested on it. Since you ask about the main issues on resurrection, in such a pleasant way I am writing to you. Resurrection is essential. Many do not believe in it, and a few find it. So let us discuss it in our treaty. Okay. Next part is the Son, Christ as Son of God and Son of humanity. So this is probably this part right here. Okay, how long did the Lord live his life? While he was in flesh, and after he revealed himself as Son of God, he went about in this world, where you live, and spoke about the law of nature, which I call death. Reginus, the Son of God, was a son of humanity. He embraced both aspects, humanity and divinity, so that by being a son of God he might conquer death, and by being a son of humanity, fullness might be restored. For originally he was from above, a seed of truth, before the structure of the world, with all its dominions and deities, came into being. Okay. Resurrection of Christ. I know I am presenting this explanation in difficult terms, but there is nothing in the word of truth that is difficult. Christ came to provide the explanation, to leave nothing hidden, but to reveal everything clearly about coming into being, the destruction of evil, the revelation of the chosen. This means the emergence of truth and spirit, and grace belongs to truth. Savior swallowed death. You must know this. When he laid aside the perishable world, he exchanged it for the incorruptible eternal realm. He arose and swallowed the visible through the invisible, and thus he granted us the way to our immortality. Okay. Philosophers and believers, if some do not believe, they cannot be persuaded. My son, the affirmation that the dead will arise belongs to the realm of faith, not of argument. Among the world's philosophers, is there one who believes? Certainly, that philosopher will arise, but that philosopher should not trust anyone who turns to himself alone, even for our faith. We know the Son of Humanity, and we believe that he arose from the dead. We say of him, he became death's destroyer. Thought and mind will not perish. The object of belief is great, and the believers are also great. The thought of believers will not perish, and the mind of those who know will not perish. We are the chosen for salvation and redemption, since from the beginning it was determined that we would not fall into the folly of the ignorant, but we would enter into the understanding of those who know the truth. The truth they guard cannot be lost, nor will it. The system of the fullness is strong. What broke loose and became the world is insignificant. What is held fast is the all. It did not come into being, it was. So I'm going on to flesh and spirit. Okay, so never doubt the resurrection. Reginus. Although once you did not exist in flesh, you took on flesh when you entered this world. Why is it then that you will not take your flesh with you when you ascend into the eternal realm? What is better than flesh is what animates the flesh. What came into being because of you, isn't it yours? If it is yours, doesn't it exist with you? But while you are in the world, what are you missing? Is that what you have attempted to learn about the outflow of the body, which is old age? Are you nothing but corruption? Leaving this behind will profit you, for you will not give up the better part when you leave. The inferior part will suffer loss, but there is grace for it. Nothing redeems us from this world, but we are of the all, and we are saved. We have been saved from the start to finish. Let us think about it in this way. Let us accept it in this way. Okay, what is resurrection? Oh, these two have the same exact titles there. Some inquire further and want to know whether one will be saved immediately if the body is left behind. Let there be no doubt about this. Surely the visible parts of the body are dead and will not be saved. Only the living parts that are within will arise. Spirit. What is a resurrection? It is always the disclosure of those who have arisen. If you remember reading in the gospel that Elijah and Moses appeared with Jesus, do not think that the resurrection is an illusion. It is no illusion. It is truth. It is more appropriate to say that the world is illusion, rather than the resurrection that came into being through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Okay, reality and illusion. What am I telling you? All at once the living die. How do they live in illusion? The rich become poor. The kings are overthrown. Everything changes. The world is illusion. Let me not speak so negatively. The resurrection is different. It is real. It stands firm. It is revelation of what is, a transformation of things, a transition into newness. Incorruptibility flows over corruption. Light flows over darkness, swallowing it. Fullness fills what it lacks. These are symbols and images of resurrection. This brings goodness. Resurrection is already here. Reginus, do not get lost in the details, nor live according to the flesh for the sake of harmony. Flee from divisions and bonds. And then you already have resurrection. If the moral part knows itself, knows that it will die, even though it has lived many years in this life, why not look at yourself and see that you already have arisen and have been received in? You have the resurrection, but go on as if you are to die, when it is that mortal part that knows it is dead. Why am I so patient? Only because of the lack of your training. Everyone needs to practice ways to be released from this element so as not to wander in error, but rather to recover what one was at the beginning. What I received through the generosity... Okay, so this is the conclusion, sorry. But what I received through the generosity of my Lord Jesus Christ, I have taught to you and your brothers and sisters, who are my children, about them, and I have left nothing out that may strengthen you. If anything in the explanation of the treatise is too deep, ask, and I shall clarify it. Do not be worried about sharing this treatise with anyone among you, for it can be helpful. Many are awaiting what I have written to you. I say peace and grace be with them. I greet you and those who love you with the love of family. So this is a really good little letter here. I believe this is definitely a letter. But I can read to you the gigantic... well, it's not necessarily a footnote. It's basically just some dialogue that explains where this came from and all that. I could read that to you if you so desire. Haven't had any comments lately on asking for that particular type of stuff, but it is in here. This is the well, you can read backwards, the treatise on resurrection. We'll change the camera around at some point. But yeah, it's a pretty good little letter in here. It explains a lot. This explains, there's so much in this little part here that's I think I went backwards. Did I do that? Did I show that? I don't know. I may have gone backwards, but anyways, yeah, this is a pretty good letter, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to play it again and get a good understanding of what this is what a lot of the early Christians believed in. Basically, a lot of this stuff was, as we know, a lot of this stuff was hidden because and I think it had to do with the Catholic Church at the time. I think that's probably what it was. Plus other religions, they didn't want you because they were persecuting the early Christians. The Jews were helping the Romans to torture them. And then finally when Constantine made the church, he accepted them, and then they were basically accepted. And then the Catholic Church went to persecute the Cathars and the other people that were Christians that didn't want to belong to a religious sect. So they went and attacked them too. So the ones that stay pure Christian and the ones that are just constantly attacked from the very beginning. And this is, some of this in here does, talk about it, for what he says in here. From originally he was from above, a seat of truth before the structure of the world with all its dominions and deities. So all its gods and all its dominions. So the angels and the gods. So Jesus was there before this came into play. So that would, go against what Catholicism would try to talk about. There is no other gods because the Old Testament God would be the only God. But that's not what they believed at that time. Plus, a lot of this basically says, there's no physical resurrection. It's just when the body goes, it goes. That's the reason why even Jesus says in there, "Let the dead bury the dead." It's a pretty harsh statement, but what it basically boils down to is that worshiping the dead. But there's a particular time that you could still possibly be here. Your soul could still be attached to the body while the body's rotting away. There's probably a particular time, so it's good to have like a mourning area, but once, you know, once that time has passed, it's, you know, the person, the soul, the person, who that person was, is not in that body anymore, and the body will rot, deteriorate, and go away. And but what Jesus was talking about was a spiritual resurrection, the what's within. Even in here in the beginning, when he talks about what's better for the stuff that formed the body to be freed of it, or to hold on to what the body was and yearn for that. So this is another part, this is another reason why I wanted to talk about this, because even Jesus never really supported the worshiping of the dead, because of how he said what he said. You know, let the dead bury the dead. Basically saying those people that bury the dead and sort of worship that practice, they're really hopeful for that practice. They're dead inside. They don't have life. They're loving the death part more than they're loving the life part. And so Jesus was basically talking about, even when Jesus was saying, you know, the God, the real God is not a God of the dead. When he said that in, I can't remember which New Testament part it was, but it's in there. And so this is a reason why I want to do some of this. This is, I guess this would be a little more Gnostic in that sense. But that's what they initially did believe in, the early Christians. It's a huge book here, and it's got a lot of writings in it. Now, some of them, you know, might not make sense according to what Jesus had to say, and if they completely steer off course from what Jesus had to say and how he said it, especially in the Gospels, if it doesn't seem to match up with his dialogue, because a lot of his dialogue is a bit metaphorical to help you understand the spiritual sense of the world, using some physical signs to help emphasize the spiritual side of things. And so that's the reason why some of these in here that I've read just don't sound like Jesus, you know, it doesn't sound like what he might do. So a lot of these were taken out, but there's still a lot of good ones in here. It really just boils down to, what did Jesus say? Did it have to do with loving and caring other people? Loving and caring for other people? And if somebody wrote something that's completely contrary to that, then that's that person's interpretation, and it might not be, it might be difficult, it might be wrong completely, or it might be difficult to ascertain what they were trying to understand from what Jesus said. Maybe they couldn't understand it correctly and they wrote down their own interpretation. But there are parts in here that are very valuable, like the teachings of Sylvanus, and I'm not sure if I read that one on a video yet, but the teachings of Sylvanus is a pretty good one. This is actually mentioned in my Bible. It's mentioned about the teaching of Sylvanus, and I think I did read through this. It's kind of a big one, but it's mentioned in my Bible, and it's not in the Bible. It's here in the NAG Hammadi. So there's definitely links and correlations from what was in the Bible correlating to things that were taken out of the Bible according to the early Catholic Church, the early Orthodox or Catholic Church. I can't remember which one. Well, I think the Catholic Church was first. The Orthodox broke off, but so it gets really confusing after a while, and you have to just kind of like try to piece together the ones that make sense, that are of sound judgment and make sense. And after a while, like you can read the Gospels over and over again to figure out which other parts could also play into it, because the thing is, once you read the Gospels over and over and over again, and you understand what Jesus was talking about, it was about the Spirit, it was about what's inside. You know, you will have to do good works on a physical level here to help other people with a kind and loving attitude. If you can do that, and you have love and kindness and caring in your heart, you'll be able to understand exactly what Jesus was saying in the Bible. If you have hatred, anger, jealousy, you're trying to utilize this for some nefarious reason. That's why one of the parts in the Bible where it says, well, I'm talking to them in parables so they don't understand, because they're trying to manipulate him into doing something wrong. And so because of that, Jesus used the words in just the right way. So they'd have to lower themselves down to thinking in a childlike state, in a loving manner, to be able to understand what it is. They can't understand it with their mindset as it was at that point, because if they did, they would just try to manipulate it to get whatever they wanted, to get it done. And that's the wrong way to understand it. But if you read the Gospels with a good, open, loving, kind, caring intent, you're going to understand exactly what Jesus was trying to say, especially if you read through John. John starts off at a very slow pace and starts to pick it up and go through it a little bit more and more and more. The other Gospels are their interpretation of what Jesus was trying to say. John got the understanding. John got the message. And when you read through John enough times and you look at the other Gospels, it gets easier to interpret the other ones because John had a better understanding of it. So this is the reason why I even go and look into stuff like this, because I'm trying to look at all the other connection points. And so Venus is mentioned. So Venus is in the NAG Hammadi here, as are other things in here too. This one's an amazing little letter document, the letter to Regulus right here. And there's a lot of other ones in here too. Some are very hard to understand and describe. And some are coming from other people's interpretations, and they might not have a good interpretation of it. And some might have a really good interpretation of it. But these are all extra pieces of the information. And at the time when Jesus was there, what Jesus essentially did, once you actually read through all the Gospels, you'll understand that he was basically telling the Jews that their traditions really meant nothing as far as salvation, and what they were supposed to be doing, they weren't doing. Now, this could be possibly seen as anti-Semitic. Some people might say that, or they might get it in their thick skulls, which they're completely off the rocker there. It's just that Jesus was trying to say traditions are fine, but they're not the end all. It's not, you don't have to do this to gain salvation. That wasn't the point. The point of a lot of that was what came from within you. Do you have mercy, kindness, and compassion? You know, were you doing these things? Was the temple used for people that needed something? Were you donating to it as a sort of resource area for those in need? Was it for those types of people, or was it there for people that felt that they were powerful and wanted to stand on their crook and, you know, tell you how you're going to gain salvation by giving stuff to them? You know, so they held the key and you didn't. But if you went to them, they could help you get through that door. But it had nothing, you know, it had nothing to do with what you could do. It was how you gave to them, is that they gave the key back to you. That's not true salvation. This is what Jesus was trying to get to. Jesus was trying to tell us how we live our lives and how we do good works for each other, and understanding that we are a part of a greater source of holiness. This is the salvation that is. That's it. So, you know, as far as trying to read through a lot of this and trying to help other people understand, I have to try to read through some of this and see which ones are very close to the understanding of what Jesus had to say and what he was about. Otherwise, if I try to read some of this, which I will read some more of these things at some point and try to give you my understanding of it, but some of them can be really like, who said it? Why do they say it? You know, what was the purpose of it? You know, trying to interpret an old reading from people of an old time. You know, sometimes, 2,000 years ago, totally different culture, totally different standards. If I go here and I tell you exactly how some of these things were, I don't know if I can be 100% accurate all the time, just because of the fact that I didn't live back then. I didn't live at that time. And you'll have other people telling you what they know about these things if they didn't live at this time. The reason that I can understand the Gospels is because I've read it multiple times. I've read it so many times, and it just comes to you. If you just loosen up release your anger, release your hatred, release your jealousy, release all the things that hold you back. You just read it with an open mind. That's all you got to do. And that's all it takes to understand the Gospels. And once you understand that and you read through more of the book to get, other pieces of information that also link to things in case you're more curious, you'll find other things too that link to the NAG Hammadi. You'll find other sources of information, But you got to find the ones that make sense as far as what correlates to what Jesus was actually trying to describe. And once you get those, see what connections are there. But don't go too crazy. Don't go too crazy with it, because there's some things in here I really wanted to read this one to you. It's called Thunder, and apparently it's about either Sophia or Isis or whatever that is all about, which is basically wisdom. And I can't say I know everything about it, because as far as what's concerned with the Sophia thing, is that there's so many things written about it, and they all kind of go all over the place. I can't tell which one the real Sophia is, whether it's the earth, it could be a possible dimension of some kind, it could be the earth that's solidified. It was apparently Tiamat before, which was earth, or that's even why the Pope and other priests and things will say, Mother Earth and things like that, which is, I've always wondered, why would they do that? Even when I was younger, there was a archbishop that came to my school when I was younger, when we had Earth Day, and he was celebrating Earth Day, Mother Earth Day. And the Pope will say it. I mean, they've got the little pine cone on the Pope's rod, the pineal gland, which is actually in your brain. It's a real thing, which does give off colors and lights and all kinds of stuff connected to your eyes. I'm going a little bit off topic here, but as far as the Sophia myth, I mean, it's hard because it branches me down to all these roads and topics, and everything I've read about Sophia is like an entity, is the world, is someone that was betrayed, it is a forsaken mother / lover of the entity that she created. It's an entity that's very powerful. It wants to go back to the source creation, and it was sorry for what it did, or what she did. I should say she, probably, instead of it. Sophia is also known as wisdom. So there's so much that I've been reading about Sophia in here that I'm like, I don't know what this is. It just gets so confusing after a while because there's so many things. And then I read about thunder, and I'm like, oh, that's about Sophia. And then it basically sounds like a woman dialect going, I am this, but I am also this. I'm like, and it goes back and forth, and it contradicts itself a little bit, but it sort of plays itself out like a woman saying, I am really this, but you see me as this. I'm really this, but you see me as that. And it kind of goes on. And I wonder if that has to do with Sophia and stuff, because the other part of the NAG Hammadi is the whole Sophia understanding. I don't want to say myth, because the fact is, I believe there is a resurrection. I believe we will exit this body and we will go back to the real source of creation, the real true God that Jesus was actually talking about. And if Sophia is a real entity, which it's been described in here a lot of other ancient religions were talking about things like that. I think the Egyptians took that upon themselves, and they created the Isis name for it because of dialects. So Isis could potentially be that, I'm not sure. And so but another thing I wanted to say too is that the fall of Babylon, when Babylon broke, that's when everybody moved out. And they took the dialect with them to all different locations. And they took the stories too. They didn't just create up new stories. If you look at all the stories, a lot of them are all linked to each other. Zeus and Osiris, I think, are the same character. Zeus and Odin are the same character. Thor is almost a representation of Jesus, if not a very identical character to Jesus. you put the two stories together, and it's a weird thing that happens where it just starts to sound like, are they the same guy? You know, you just kind of wonder. He's the son of Earth. Jesus is the son of man. You know, Thor is a protector of Earth. Jesus is the protector of our souls. It can get pretty far out there at that point. But trying to make the connections, it's hard to describe all the connections. I can go and show you the stories, and how they kind of connect back and forth. But it's really interesting, and I'd like to do that at some point. But as far as talking about Sophia, talking about some of these other things, Thunder is the one that's just super out there, that it sounds like a Sophia story. You know, it's on page 367 here in this book here. And I could read it to you, and I was possibly thinking about doing that, but maybe I'll save that for next week or so to do that. I just wanted to give you some opinion of what I wanted to say here as far as the NAG Hammadi, and as far as like what I want to do with it and what I want to read, because it's a valid book. It's definitely a valid book. You'll hear some other people on the net saying, "Oh no, it was created at this particular time or whatever," and blah blah blah. But the fact is, Sylvanus is in here. It's mentioned in my Bible that Sylvanus is talked about as a very important thing to read about, which is not included in the New Testament. And so the fact that there's, and I think even the Old Testament took out the book of Enoch too, which actually describes giants, which there have been discoveries of giants. This is a real thing. It's not just something made up. There have been discoveries of it, and it's all been archived, because, well, it would technically go against the whole evolution thing, and, well, the government controls that, and they want to push their rhetoric, and if they push the rhetoric, you buy into it, you buy whatever they have to sell to you, and you give them your money. That's all it really is to it. It's just a money grab in the end. At the end of the day, everybody's trying to make a buck. Even the government is too. So I'm just telling you the way that's basically the world is. You probably know, but some people are a little bit resistant to imagining that anything will. The fact is, you have to find a job to make a job to do something, and some people find very nefarious ways to do that, and so they make their living that way. But I digress. I'm pretty much done with this right now. I think I'll go over Thunder, and I'll just kind of ramble on and talk about what I think some of it means. But the fact is, I'd prefer not to ramble on stuff if I can, because I'd rather just tell you what it seems to be according to other links and connections to this source of information or that source of information. But there's 900 pages in here, and I think until I really get a great understanding, I'll just tell you what it says, and I'll give you a thought of what I think it means, but I can't say for sure. The only thing I can say for sure is that Jesus was talking about the spiritual side of the world, and the people weren't getting it. They just wanted to go get a free meal, get some wine, watch something amazing, and that's all they wanted. They couldn't get all that in the end. They crucified him. Jesus had his mission to come here to help us out because he wanted to help us help others, and that was the point of it. We do that. We believe there's a higher source up there, and we do our part, and we just get rid of wanting to possess items and people here. We'll leave. We'll go and we'll get to heaven. That's what that's all about. So that's all I got today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like. And let me know what you want to see or hear next time. I think I'll probably still do the Thunder. I'll read that to you because, I don't know, I just saw the title. I'm like, Thunder. Oh, that's awesome. I got to read that. So I think I'll just do that next time just for fun. And so I'll read that to you. And so... as far as what I'll do with the New Testament, I'll have to look at that next week and see what I can put together as far as which parts of the Gospels correlate, and then I'll put that together for you next week. So have a great day. Hopefully you enjoyed this. And if for the people on Minds, thank you very much for subscribing to me on Minds. That's growing really quickly, very fast. I'm very surprised, which is really nice. But if you do want to help out the YouTube side, please subscribe on YouTube as well, because this is a newer channel. My other channel that I have has mostly been about games, so that's usually what people kind of go there for. So that and some other mythology stuff that I've put on there too. But anyways, I'm going to conclude today. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.